The 25-year-old drug dealer is in court today for sentencing after admitting his part in the overdose death of 29-year-old Kristen Coutu. Coutu had left a drug treatment facility just 2 days before her death because her insurance wouldn't cover more than 30 days of inpatient treatment. On the day she died, she arranged to buy drugs from Andrade, but unknown to her, the heroin the dealer gave her was laced with a fatal dose of fentanyl.
The Attorney General says it's the first time a drug dealer has been convicted of murder of someone who overdosed, a landmark case with many implications for how the state will prosecute dealers.
Andrade pleaded no contest to second-degree murder in relation to Coutu's death in a plea agreement that saw 2 further drug charges against him dismissed. At sentencing, Judge Kristen Rogers hears submissions from the prosecution on the nature of the evidence they held against Andrade.
The state would have proven that what the defendant really sold Kristen Coutu was nearly pure fentanyl, a controlled substance like heroin or morphine, hundreds of times more toxic.
She asks the defendant if the facts of the case are true, and he admits that they are.
Are all of these facts true?
Yes, ma'am.
Kristen Coutu's mother then gives an emotional impact statement, recalling the horror of being told her daughter overdosed.
2 Cranston police officers standing there. All I could say repeatedly was, "Please don't tell me my daughter is dead. Please don't tell me my daughter is dead."
Family members look on in the public gallery, weeping, and Kristen's mom even has to stop at one stage so that a grieving relative can leave the room.
It's okay. It's okay.
Following the impact statements, Andrade stands to speak, and what he says surprises the court.
A lot of people, including her family and mine, because we're all going through this.
Unlike most convicts, Andrade takes full responsibility for what he has done, expressing remorse and a clear understanding that his actions have caused untold grief for the Coutu family. However, Andrade's repentant words can't save him, and Judge Rogers hands him 40 years, with 20 to serve.
Your Honor, this defendant stands before you indicted on, among others, the count of murder for, as the state alleges, delivering a substance containing fentanyl which killed Kristen Coutu.
The remorseful dealer shows no visible reaction to the sentence as he calmly accepts his fate. While truly genuine remorse like Andrade's might be an unusual occurrence in the courtroom, most defendants will try to appear at least a little bit contrite when put before a judge. However, a small few, like Charles Crossty, are so cold and unapologetic that even a significant prison sentence doesn't stir a reaction from them. Crossty is in Clement County Court for sentencing on drug trafficking and corruption charges. The 35-year-old was found guilty on 12 counts after being caught in possession of $5,000 worth of heroin and cocaine that was intended for the streets of New Richmond. Crossty has a long criminal history spanning back to the age of 14, and police say he set up his dealing empire just 4 months after being released from a previous prison stint for trafficking heroin. The hearing kicks off with Assistant Prosecutor Darren Miller trying to impress on Judge Thomas Herman the extent of the damage done to the community by Crossty.
Heroin is bad enough, but laced with fentanyl, it becomes a game of Russian roulette. And individuals like Charles Crossty provide the weapon, they provide the bullet, and they spin the chamber, pointing at the addict's head, and all the addict has to do is pull the trigger. That's who Charles Crossty is.
Officials say that while the defendant was active, overdoses and drug-related deaths spiraled due to large amounts of fentanyl-laced heroin on the streets. Crosty's drug-dealing antics are scandalous enough, but when Police Chief Rand Harvey tells the court how he forced addicts to sell his products, the court is stunned by what he has to say.
They would have black eyes or their face would be swollen. And I would ask them, how did this occur? And they would frankly tell me that Charles Crossty and his associates would beat them.
You heard right, Crossty would feed the addictions of his customers and then beat them senseless until they agreed to sell drugs on the streets for him. Crossty seemingly couldn't care less about his horrific actions being laid bare to the court and simply rolls his eyes as Harvey speaks. The defendant continues to stare vacantly as Judge Herman lists off his lengthy criminal record before sentencing him to 20 years and 9 months in prison. True to form, Crossty doesn't even flinch as the sentence is handed down. Thankfully for New Richmond residents, their town will now be safer for a long time to come. While many kingpins like Crossty prefer the ultimate power and glory of working alone, a small few choose to tag team their responsibilities, and as with racketeering and false imprisonment in Florida.
The drugs were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
As per reports, the 28-year-old former sheriff's deputy, Zachary Wester, was accused of planting drugs on unsuspecting motorists during traffic stops.
Seriously. Hey, man. Go ahead and put your hands. Don't. At this point, you are detained, okay?
I don't do anything. Okay. I don't mess with that stuff.
If the drivers denied knowledge of the drugs, they were arrested anyway.
The syringe is actually in like a plastic, larger baggie with a plastic container with a substance in it that appears to be an illegal narcotic. Do you know anything about that?
I do not.
Some of Wester's victims had other prior offenses, which made the alleged possession charges even more serious.
Look, man, you seem like you're pretty squared away, okay?
Yeah.
All right. But I do have an issue with something within the vehicle.
What's that?
Pulled you over. Your driver's license is not valid. Okay. Pulled you out to talk to you about it.
And for the poor souls who resisted and protested their innocence, Wester used his taser on them.
Invasive. I'm gonna send y'all hell away here in just a minute. He didn't have anything. That was a slick move, man. Very slick.
Hey, man.
Go ahead and put your hands up. Do not do this.
That's right.
That ain't mine, man. What you trying to do?
Don't just.
What are you doing?
After a while, the arrest caused suspicion internally.
Began what's called an internal affairs investigation into the defendant's use of his body cameras.
Wester was suspended from the sheriff's department.
First, he made the recommendation that the defendant be suspended pending the outcome of the investigation.
The case went to trial, where Wester pleaded not guilty to all charges.
This is a case about an abuse of an incredible power. The defendant used his position as a deputy sheriff to make traffic stops on 12 members of this community and plant methamphetamine in their cars, methamphetamine and paraphernalia. He turned what should be a law enforcement agency, and is, into something for his own use that was criminal.
Some of Wester's body cam footage was found mysteriously deleted or unusable.
Why in the world would that have been deleted? I wish I knew that answer.
However, the prosecutor found something suspicious in one of Wester's body cam footage.
Why in the world does the defendant have palmed in his hand, which is clasped like this, not like this, not like this, like this, a plastic baggie? Why in the world does he have that there? I would submit that this is objective evidence where you see him planting drugs in the moment. You see something in his hand that has no reason, no logical reason, given this stop and what we know about it, for it to be there. This is him planting evidence, and you see it.
Wester's victims testified in court.
I knew the truck was clean. I knew it was.
The white, small plastic baggie that was in that spoon that the deputy just showed you on this video. Had you ever seen that before?
No, sir.
Was that in your car?
No, sir.
The only thing I really saw was the fact that he did kept going into the car like several times, over and over and over again. Because he'd come back, he'd talk to me, he'd go back to the car, he'd come back to me, he'd go back to the car.
Count 1, guilty of racketeering as charged. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Guilty of official misconduct related to Teresa Odom as charged.
Wester was sentenced to 12 years in prison.
The drugs were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
How does it compare to attacking your lawyer in court?
Stop. You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
This is Taylor Schab, a murder suspect in Wisconsin. As per reports, 25-year-old Schabusiness killed and mutilated Shad Theien in a drug-fueled intimate act. 24-year-old Shad was strangled with a metal chain, and his dismembered body was found in his mother's basement. Schabusiness left his severed head in a bucket and other body parts in a storage tote, plastic bags, and cardboard boxes.
There was remains, 2 different specific types of remains that I observed.
What kind?
There was a human head. There was genitalia in the bucket.
Shad's mother was the first to discover her son's remains.
You kind of came upon the bucket, happenstance kind of, right?
Right.
So then you took the towel off?
I did.
Schabusiness later admitted that killing Shad wasn't the only thing she did to him.
I don't want to put the in there.
You driving on?
Yeah,
Did you ever put his in your Okay, you just trying on? So when did you start, cutting up his body?
like almost everybody else sucking and cutting at the same time.
She was arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree assault. During a court appearance, Schabi shockingly attacked her lawyer.
Stop it. Stop it. Rachel, call. Is they bringing 7 in?
She had to be pacified by 2 court officers.
You went off on your attorney, Taylor. You went crazy on your attorney.
Slammed Schabusiness, telling her there's no excuse for her cowardly actions.
If you take the path to go get the help, you wouldn't be in this situation right now. None of us would be in this situation. But to take the cowardly path that you did and to make other people suffer because you were suffering is pretty shitty.
Kelly said he wished death in prison for Schabi's and hoped she'd meet the same fate as her idol, Jeffrey Dahmer.
I will pray that you meet the same fate as your idolistic Jeffrey Dahmer. So have a good life, business.
Michael Theine, Shad's father, said he forgave Shabis for what she did to his son and hoped she would use her time in prison to become a better person.
Taylor, I just wanted to say that I forgive you for what you've done to my son. And yeah, you made a bad choice, and now you have to live with it.
Judge Walsh said that this crime offends human decency.
And I'm going to ask the judge if he can, if she can see the streets again sometime, It may not be soon, but I believe everybody makes bad choices, and maybe not to the scale, but I think there's a lot of hope for you.
This crime offends human decency, it offends human dignity, and it offends the human community.
Taylor Schabusiness was later found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The decision of this court and the judgment of the law that Ms. Schabusiness be sentenced as follows. Count 1, that's the first-degree intentional homicide as a repeater. It's a Class A felony. Life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision.
Taylor Schabusiness's trial was filled with blood-chilling moments. Jose Gavia-Jimenez. Police say that Jimenez was working with a Mexican cartel to operate a heroin trafficking operation that brought as much as 100 kilos of the drug into Columbus every month. The investigation resulted in the seizure of 25 kilos of heroin, which was worth a whopping $2.5 million. Jimenez pleaded guilty to 2 counts of trafficking along with 1 count of engaging in corrupt activity and is appearing at the Franklin County Courthouse today for sentencing. Far from the heights of his glory days, as the ringleader of a Columbus drug operation, Jimenez shuffles into the courtroom wearing khaki prison-issued scrubs. However, he hasn't completely lost his sense of steely command as he shoots a quick icy stare at the narcotics investigators who are in court to see their hard work come to fruition. Assistant Prosecutor Dan Stanley begins the hearing by making Jimenez's high-ranking position within the operation abundantly clear.
He's the ringleader of an organization that is so fear-inspiring that the people who come here from Mexico refuse to testify against it because they know as soon as they are born, their family will be murdered in Mexico.
He also speaks of the fear-inducing power of the cartel and the difficulties this poses when trying to obtain convictions against gang members. All the while, Jimenez maintains his stance, standing bolt upright while glaring into the distance. A female witness who's not shown on camera to protect her identity gives evidence to the court about how she helped him store and move heroin in the Columbus area.
He was bringing me the drugs to my house.
What kind of drugs?
Heroin.
How much?
1 kilo, and the last time 2 kilos.
Watch Jimenez as she testifies. You'd be forgiven for thinking he was a statue, but if you look closely, you'll see that he does in fact blink. The ringleader has been stone cold up until now, and his lack of remorse is about to get clearer as he addresses the court through an interpreter.
This has been overblown.
Y pido perdón por lo que yo he hecho.
And I apologize.
Jimenez stands and expresses some form of apology curtly in Spanish, looking as if he's choking on every word. His translator manages to make his words sound more human in English. However, Judge Kimberly Koft isn't buying any of his feeble regret, and she takes him to task on his claims that his accountability has been inflated by the prosecution team.
I'm surprised to hear you saying today that your participation is overblown.
Judge Koft reminds him sharply that she informed him of his statutory requirements for a conviction before sentencing Jimenez to 21 years in prison. She also orders that the drug baron be deported immediately upon his discharge.
I was very intentional about explaining to you the statutory requirement for conviction.
Jimenez shows no reaction to the fact that he will be approaching 70 when he's released, and instead just saunters from the courtroom with an expression of disdain on his face. Jimenez's total lack of emotion is unnerving, and as we see in the next case, Dexter Lee Williams shows and one such case is Aaron Andrade. We see in the next case, some even choose to make it a family business. This is Rashad Johnson and his brother Marquez Johnson. The Jacksonville siblings are appearing before Duval County Judge R. Anthony Salem for sentencing after being tried together and convicted of drug trafficking and possession charges. Their arrests came after police raided a trap house on the east side of Jacksonville, and the charges they were convicted of had drug enhancements because both men were identified as leaders of the ruthless 1200 Out East gang. Watch the brotherly love as Marquez shoots Rashad a nod of acknowledgement prior to sentencing. Members of the Johnson family file into the witness box to plead for leniency, telling the judge that the men have 7 kids between them.
I often think about the things I could have been different as a parent. I know my sons could have had a better outcome in life.
And he's a family man?
He is.
And do you feel he's a good father?
He's a great father. Your Honor, I pray and ask the true merciful. I pray that there are some resources to help them grow.
Then the brothers take it in turns to address the judge.
I don't know what kind of sentence you will hand out today, but I would ask that you be lenient towards me. I have a beautiful family, which includes 4 kids and a stepchild. I am not a bad person. I'm not a monster. I'm not a gamer. Just a human being who made mistakes.
And throws himself at the mercy of Judge Salem, claiming to simply be a man who has made mistakes. In a similar vein, Marquez denies any involvement in gang activity.
I am not labeled as a menace, an animal, or a gang member or in my community or anywhere else. And I just want to say I'm sorry to my family once again for putting me through the situation and letting them down.
Prosecutors aren't buying it, and they argue that the Johnson brothers had plenty of opportunity to clean up their act, but continued to engage in gang-related activities.
They had the opportunity to better their lives after serving 3 years in the Florida State Prison, and they came back out and continued doing the same pattern of criminal activity that they've been arrested so many times before for. They even moved out of their community. But instead of staying out of their community and getting jobs, the court has heard nothing from any of these witnesses about legal jobs that they had. They provided for their families financially, but how are they doing that? By selling drugs.
The men stand side by side to hear their fate, and with the futures of 2 men hanging in the balance, it seems like Judge Salem has a heavy decision to make. The sentence he hands down stuns the courtroom.
Adjudicated guilty, sentenced to 30 years Florida State Prison, with 581 days.
Loud sobs echo through the public gallery from the men's supporters as a hefty 30-year sentence is imposed on both brothers. As upset as the men's family members may be, the brothers seem to be taking their 3-decade punishment in stride. Rashad turns and waves goodbye to his family without a trace of sadness as he is led from the courtroom. The Johnson brothers' sentences may seem heavy to some,